You don't want to just pull them right out of that bag and plop them on a beehive because they're going to be dripping acid. It's on the outside, and those drops, if they go right on the bees or the brood, it will kill it. If you do overfill them, it's not a big deal because the acid that doesn't get absorbed into the pads can be reused. They fill pretty much instantly, but we like to fill them a day ahead and just let them sit overnight to make sure they're 100% filled. We use a stick or something. We cut just scrap lumber, like this would work fine. Or if you're in a pinch in a bee yard, just a short stick, about a 1/2 inch wide, lay it on there, and then we just lay them at the back. Like you'd essentially just, on a regular floorboard or underneath the screen, leave it stick out a little bit so you can get it out easier. Okay, we're all here because we probably have the same problem, the mites in our beehives. It's a problem that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's here to stay. And they're getting to be less and less treatments, it feels like, to treat them and control them. But I think we have part of the solution here, hopefully. But at least it's working for us. So, MiteGone, it's the Formic applicator at the base of it to get it into the hives and have it vaporized to get onto the mites and kill them. It's sold dry. The Formic is sold separate and has to be added to it, and that can be intimidating to a lot of people. It's not really that bad. I'll go over today and show you how to do that and safely do it, being the number one thing. To do it safely, and then how to apply it on hives and what to expect and how it works. So number one, formic acid is, obviously the name is an acid. When applied, it's usually at 65% is what it needs to be. I'm assuming most of you would be buying it probably here at 65%. It's ready, but there may be some who buy it in a higher concentration at bulk, which it comes usually at 85%, and you have to cut it down to 65. There's some sheets there on how to do that. But I said for most people that doesn't really apply too much. When you're handling the formic acid, before we get into the pads, try not to ever do it inside. Make sure it's a well ventilated area. You should have a respirator of some sort with a organic vapor cartridge because it is quite hard on the lungs and it's not good for your skin. Rubber gloves are a must, and some sort of eye protection is necessary. Just a small drop can cause a lot of problems. So we recommend you use a mask similar to these because you got your eye protection and your vapor protection all in one. So yeah, what you do is we fill them. To say outside, you try to do it off concrete if you're going to do it because formic acid is hard on concrete. You can eat it and dimple it, and they actually use it for etching concrete in industrial applications. So do it on some grass or gravel or somewhere where if you have a plastic tub or something to make sure it doesn't get on your floor because it will cause some damage. So I guess we'll get into how to fill them and kind of go step by step to application and then what you'd expect to see. Comes in two sizes. This is the 22 pack. There's also a 162 pack that can be got. Has 162 pads in it. This one, the 22, is obviously 22 in a package. To fill them, so you'd have your formic separate. You'd want to do it on the ground. You don't want to do it up high just because there's more room it can splash. With your protective gear on, I'll demonstrate it just to say it's not as bad as it looks. I'm not going to put my mask on. This is just water, just so everybody's aware. They wouldn't do it this way. No, and if I put the mask on, nobody will hear me either. It's not very good for that. It's very straightforward. For the 22, you need about 2.5 liters of formic. So we have, and you just, right on the ground, just literally just pour it in there. See, these are actual pads, but this is just water. So.
And the bag comes in the...
Yeah, the bag, it all comes ready. You just kind of fold the bag open and start pouring. See, unfortunately, the size of the formic jugs are not exact, so you end up having to have a partial. That's why I do it out on the grass, just in case you get a drop. If you do overfill them, it's not a big deal because the acid that doesn't get absorbed into the pads can be reused. Yeah, you kind of fill it. I don't know if you can see, like it pushed them up because they're lighter. So you kind of have to push them back down a little bit. And you can, I'll pull it out.
You want it fully submerged.
Yeah, you want it kind of fully submerged. You can see I don't know if you can see the water's basically to the top. You can kind of come around and show, be off the camera, but so kind of look like that. They'll change color just a little bit. You'd fill it and then put some rubber bands on it, which are also included in the box.
the big kit comes with a zip tie.
Yeah, the bigger kit has a reusable zip tie. So kind of just fold it over. And then wrap it fairly well. Yeah, it is marked on the label. It says to open which side up, because yeah. And be careful with a knife, you don't slice the bag, because then you will have leaks. It is a good idea to maybe, if you're transporting that, to keep it in a Rubbermaid tub or something, just in case you get a pinhole or something. You wouldn't want it leaking in your car or pickup, or if you're storing it in your shop, not leaking on the floor, just in case. I mean, things happen with it. So, and we try to fill them. They fill pretty much instantly, but we like to fill them a day ahead and just let them sit overnight to make sure they're 100% filled. Yeah, you can just leave it in there if you're not using them all. And just like there's 2 layers here. If you only use the top, you could just leave the bottom ones right in that acid in the bag and just reclose it up and save it till next time. We've kept them like that for 6 months from the fall and use them the following spring. You don't want to just pull them right out of that bag and plop them on a beehive, because they're going to be dripping acid. It's on the outside, and those drops, if they go right on the bees or the brood, it will kill it. It needs to be a vapor. Most of the time, you take a 2.5 gallon honey bucket. I don't know if you guys are familiar, I'm sure, or a 1 gallon honey bucket, which would be this size here. 22 fit in here perfectly. When you're going to use them, you take them out of the bag and the acid and put them in your pail on top of your screen. Kind of show, yeah, and usually we let it sit there. We're driving between yards, you let them sit there in 15-20 minutes, so that any extra acid on the outside of the pads especially runs down into the bottom of the pail. And so they should be somewhat dry, the outside, when you apply them to the beehive. Again, they're not dry enough, you got to wear your gloves and mask. And the bigger one, if you have bigger yards, I'm not sure, most people that'd probably be plenty, but if you had 30 in a yard or 40, you can use the 2.5 gallon pail with a bigger screen and put enough for the whole yard in there. I would recommend something more along these lines, just in case you splash, or when you're reaching in the bag, you have more coverage up your arm. So the short ones, you might still touch it in there because there could be some drops on the bag, and it does burn a bit. I've fortunately had gotten a few drops on me before. So, and we actually still, when we go to apply them, we generally use tongs to grab them. It's a lot easier, but those gloves are fine. So now how to apply them? There's 2 methods that they can actually be applied. The traditional, more old-fashioned way, I guess, would be in the side of the beehive against like one of your heavy honeys on the edge of the hive and in the brood chamber. You kind of make a gap and just slide 2 in the side, and kind of just, it's very delicate, because if you squeeze them too hard pulling your frame back, it'll squeeze it out and the acid will all run down. But if you don't have them pinched just right, they will slide down. So we kind of developed and started putting them on the top bar application, which is the fastest, easiest way to do it. It takes a few seconds. The top bar application, you'd have your wet pads that are dry on the screen. We use a stick or something. We cut just scrap lumber, like this would work fine. Or if you're in a pinch in a bee yard, just a short stick, about a 1/2 inch wide. Lay it on there, and then we just lay them at the back, usually one at a time. I don't know if anybody can see that. Yeah. Without this sliding. And because if you go put your lid right on it, or the pillow, depending on what you run, or the hive cover, you don't want to just squish it down. That's the big thing. You don't want the acid just free falling down. You want it to vaporize. Because if it directly touches the bees, it will kill them. They're perforated on both sides, and the ends are open to get the adequate release. Once they're dried, they're fairly dry. Like a couple bees, you can't help it, some will land on it or something. They don't just instantly die. You try not to put it right on a bunch of bees. Like you can smoke them down and then put them on the frames. If you have a bunch of wax buildup there, you might want to scrape that first so that it's nice and flat and doesn't lift it up, and even that piece of wood isn't enough. You leave the plastic on there. If that stays on, that controls the release of it. The straight foam would come out much too fast and be very hard on your bees. So they're little black, they should be marked so you can see the perforations. Both sides are actually perforated. They're just quite hard to see, so we marked them just for demonstration, more or less. They don't come marked like that, but yeah, they are both sides perforated. and both ends open. There's a lot of variables. I mean, if you have big beehives, currently we have some with honey boxes on. We're putting 2 at a time on top. Like that's with 2 honey boxes. But in the fall, when they're dealing with just doubles or even singles, we only put 1 at a time on. It just gets to be too much. If you're putting it in the side, the old way, like they'd kind of sit in here like this. You can put 2, but there's a lot of variables. You have to judge each beehive, because if they're a little weaker or smaller, it could be too much. And we can get into that. There is things we can do to modify them if you're putting them on, like, say, a 5-frame nuke or singles, just to slow it down a little more. You'd want to put it on the top. Yeah, like yeah, this one's, we could put it right, basically the same spot, just on top. Say, make sure there's no wax, and you have something to hold your lid from just squishing down on it. Yeah, if you have a frame feeder, we put it on the opposite side of it. I don't know if most people run them or not. Yes, at the back. If you put it at the front, it's too close to the entrance, and the vapor will just get out without doing what it's supposed to do. Formic acid vapor is heavier and will sink down through the hive. Like we're putting it on top of a honey box right now, even, and it's getting down to the brood. And it's most effective probably on top of your brood chambers, but when you have honey boxes, it's hard to do that because the frames, and you can't really space them as much, so you'll end up squishing it. In each pad is 110 to 120 mils. Sometimes you get a very slight variance, and they will release probably an average, it's again very weather dependent, temperature, humidity, the size of your colony, the airflow. A lot of variables at the release rate, but in normal conditions, between 15 and 20 mils per day come out of it, and it takes about a week. Once a week we treat them when we're treating, so you go back. But again, if you have cooler in the spring they seem to last longer, probably because it is cooler and a higher humidity. The higher humidity, ambient humidity, will slow the release down, just like same as water vapor, doesn't dry as fast. So
How do you know when it's empty?
you will see it. We have some that are spent, actually. Bigger bees, you want to pass some of them out, Sienna? Bigger beehives will just start to chew the foam up and take it away. And you get some really big ones, they'll just have if you leave it in too long, there'll just be the plastic will be all that's left. We have ones that say are 4 boxes, 2 brood chambers and 2 honey boxes on top. Right now we're putting 2 on top. The best time is in the spring and the fall, before you got the honey supers. To keep your mites suppressed before they get bad. So the best is to treat them, depending on the spring. I mean, this spring was very long and late, as we all know. Usually we'd start treating the beginning of May and try to have most of it done before we get too many boxes piled up, because it is more effective right on the brood chambers. But when you have honey boxes on, sometimes things change. But then fall treatment's when we do the hardest. Like when we pull our honey boxes off the end of August, you put on 1, come back a week later. Sometimes there'll be a little bit left. You can see the color change where it is, and you can feel it even. There'll be a little bit left, like a quarter. We'll slide that over towards the middle and just put another one on, and do that once a week. If you pull them off at the perfect time, you could reuse them. But as you can see, if they're in too long, and the bees will just pack that foam right out and get rid of it. But as I said, the variables in the hive size and the weather is with any formic acid treatment. I don't know if anybody's here is familiar with the old, like the meat lock, dry lock pads, the meat wipes, or sometimes you'd come back the next day and they're almost dry, and then other times it'd be a week later and they'd still have acid in the middle. It's very dependent on the colony strength, weather. Humidity plays a big role too.
Can you talk a little bit about what you guys on your farm, like you said, beginning of May, you start the treatment. Are you doing 1 a week straight through to September?
No, we usually do a few weeks in the spring. Like we're still doing it now because it was such late. Our snow finally disappeared on the 20th of May, so we're doing it later this spring than normal. We try to have it all done 3-4 weeks, get 3-4 rounds in. For the commercial guys, if there's any here, it is tougher to be back every time, so sometimes it gets drug out to 9-10 days. It happens, but
So you're aiming for about 4 treatments, like 4 pads in the springtime?
yeah, and they do work too. If you got an issue and just want to do a flash treatment, to just even put 1. You've seen mites and just put 1 on, and we've done that in some yards. You have a bad yard or where there is elevated levels. Sometimes you treat a little harder in the middle of summer on the honey boxes. That's sort of what we're doing now. But mainly in the spring, May, we do a couple, 3-4 rounds. And then in September, definitely try to get 4. Because the mite cycle is 21 days. So if you get 4 weeks of constantly getting them, you kind of break all the brood cycles. And all the mites that are in brood that won't be affected by it come out and get the treatment.
Other formic acid treatments on the market, typically we'll see a brood break and we'll see some queen issues.
A lot of them, like especially the meat pads, they drop the formic very fast.
Okay.
Like you're losing 30, 40 mils, some of them in a day, which is can be very hard on the bees because it's hitting the limit that they can handle as well. And it can kill brood. These are, because they're more of a slower release, we haven't seen many issues with queens. I know that's a concern for a lot of guys, is with formic especially, is the queens. We haven't seen a lot. When you're doing as many hives as we have, it can be hard to tell sometimes. Like there's always a certain amount just go queenless, as everybody knows. We haven't had anything. We've treated them in weather up to 28, 29 degrees, and I wouldn't go any hotter than that ever. Like your ideal temperature would be 20, 25 degrees during the day. Is perfect treatment weather. If it's only plus 10 or 12, you can treat too, but it'll just be a slower release because temperature isn't there. And usually when it's cooler, it seems humidity is a little higher, at least in our area. So they dry a little bit slower, but if you weather 20 to 25, you'll come back in a week and there'll be just a little bit left. So you slide it over and put another one on, but yeah, if it's above 30, I wouldn't recommend doing it.
I would assume with a hive like you, being that it's insulated, might be easier and more extreme temperatures?
Possibly in the cool weather, for sure. But if it's over 30 still, the heat it'd be too much. And over 30 is where you really run into trouble with formic. With these, it could become an issue. We have our respirators on anytime we have them open. Because the fumes, like if you had this, even though they're somewhat dry, there'll still be a little bit of acid in the bottom. You open that lid, the fumes are going to come up, and you'd want your mask and your eye protection always, just for number one, and the rubber gloves. They say you can apply them with just gloves. Sometimes we do that, or the barbecue tongs that work well too. You can grab one and put them on like that.
But we recommend the maximum protection.
Yeah, always err on the side of caution. Always. Like we use the rubber gloves and the tongs.
So would it be just a better idea to pour out the excess acid at the bottom?
You could, before you start, pour it back into a container because it can be reused. The excess it'll be a little bit pink from the pads, but it's still the same acid. We reuse it all the time, the acid. I can go over the history of it a bit. It was originally started by a guy named Bill Razikas, I believe, in BC. And he passed away a few years back, and our company acquired the company from his estate. And we took it a little further. Like the top treatment was something we developed because we found that going in the sides of the hive was very time consuming, especially on a commercial scale. And you had to be very careful to not squish it out, and it took a lot of time. So we experimented with the top method, and it's much faster, easier.
The original method was to take a toothpick and toothpick it into the outside honey frame and then gently slide it against the sidewall of the hive. And I did that a couple of times, like 10 years ago. And it was a great treatment, but it's just super labor intensive to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, getting the right toothpick in and breaking it off just the right length. So I think this method has got some real advantages to it, especially since formic acid is heavier. So it drains down properly anyways.
Bill too used to have it as a 3-week treatment in the side, because in the side pinch there you'd have a lot less airflow and the formic will last longer, but you need to put in 2 or more. We wouldn't recommend 3. He used to recommend 3, but we had poor results putting 3 in. It was too spicy. Could have just been our weather compared to his in Kelowna at the time of year when he treated. But yeah, they used to put 3, but we found it was easier to put 1 a week and go back, and it was a little safer than trying to put multiple pads in at once, because it just can overwhelm the bees and the brood.
So Formic Pro is kind of the alternative on the market.
Yeah, they're very similar.
And typically we tell people that it's a great fall treatment because the spring brood break that it incurs, you're losing a lot of valuable build-up time in your colony for the honey flow. Whereas in the fall, that brood break isn't as important.
We
What's
have-
your experience with that?
We haven't really seen big brood breaks, to be honest with you. Like just yesterday we were out checking bees actually, and we had them on from the week, 10 days before. We didn't quite get back in a week. In the top box, just 8 inches away, there'd still be brood and larvae and eggs even. Like we don't get massive brood breaks. It seems to evaporate slower in the spring. I think it's just because they are a little smaller. In the fall, they do evaporate and dry out faster because your bee numbers are so much higher, and they're circulating so much more air than they are in the spring. So we haven't had huge brood break issues.
Is there a danger with only using this system as far as Varroa resistance?
I would recommend to use all the tools in your arsenal. You got your Apivar in March when it's too cold to really do anything. We use it, we put it in. We use this probably mainly, but we'll still chase at times with oxalic gas because doesn't seem to be any treatment that kills every single mite. I won't stand here and tell you that every mite you have will be gone, because it seems like no matter what you do, there's a certain amount that just don't go away. So you got to keep kind of hammering away at them and just keep them suppressed is more the goal. Because complete eradication of them, if anybody can figure it out, let me know too, please. Well, right here, I think we'll probably do one more treatment this spring, and then we won't have any on till we strip the honey boxes off at the end of August. And then we'll do 4 weeks in a row. And if we hit some bad yards when we're testing, we'll do mite drops. And we've applied these in a 24-hour mite drop, had over 1,000 mites before on a sticky board. And then you realize you got a big problem, so that yard maybe we do an extra week and 5 weeks sometimes just to. But yeah, we have had massive drops with them in 24 hours. And see, the joy of it is they do kill for generally about a week. So it can vary with the size. Don't want to sound like a broken record, but.
What about some of the other misconceptions about Formic killing queens?
I think the old way of doing it with the dry lock pads, the meat pads, did kill a fair amount because it did release so much Formic. You'd have 60 mils or some of them even 100 mil pads. I remember using them, you'd put them on and come back in 3 days and they were dry. So you're probably averaging 30, 40 mils per day of vaporizing in the hive, and that was very hard on queens. It could be. And hard on the brood too. You used to see brood dead under. We don't see that with these. Like just one pad on top. I put them on small hives and still not really had any issues. We don't see it like we used to with the meat pads. That was a lot harder on them than these. And the big issue I think with killing bees and brood is if you do have the acid dripping down. Like if the raw acid is dripping down there, it's going to kill anything it touches. Not to mention if there's 10 mils squeezed out or something, that just runs down and it's almost instantly vaporized in the hive very quickly, which could cause damage.
So that's why putting it on top is probably the safest.
In my opinion, yeah, I would. It's quick, it's safer. Like I say, we haven't had brood issues with it. We haven't lost queens anything more than kind of our normal loss, which on 3,500 hives, there's a certain amount that are always queenless for whatever reason, but we've never found like a spike in queen mortality and we don't see brood mortality from it. In the fall, we'll start, the entrances are off usually, but if it's on, you slow the release a little bit too, because there's not as much air escaping. Vapors in there, stays in a bit more. It's more effective, I think, with the entrance reducer on, because it isn't just being flushed out as fast by the bees, it's staying in there and circulating like it should. As far as corrosion on screened entrance bottoms, to be honest, I don't know. Yeah, we don't. They're all wooden floorboards we run. James used it on his Hive IQ last year, and he didn't mention anything about corrosion or any issues. I don't know if the vapor would, or if it would need actual droplets to hit it.
So with your pads, I know with Formic Pro, they recommended not to feed when you had Formic Pro on in the fall. Can you feed when you have your pads on?
We've fed or did whatever else we need to do with them on and never had issues. We use open feeding and frame feeders.
Okay.
We don't use hive top feeders. I imagine the biggest worry would be is if they're going to crush it and squish the pad, because that's the biggest concern. If you slap something on top and it just compresses it and that Formic's out, it's going to do some damage. If you feel them, the foam is very low density and it's very easy to crush it. That's the biggest thing, is to not crush it. We were talking about the release rate in smaller hives and overwhelming them sometimes. There is modifications you can do. Should be a paper there handed out. We found, and you can tape some, and just blocks a little bit with the ends and cuts the airflow back a bit. So you do get slower release. If you have like a 5-frame nuke, you wouldn't want to just slap on a full pink pad and let it go. You'd want to reduce it to, something like this where you have just small amounts open.
Would we just cut it in half?
Your ends would still be the same surface area, releasing a lot of Formic.
I see, okay, that's.
So it would be less total, but that initial dose would still be very high for the first few days, where something like this, or there's numerous different things you can do. You can hand these around if you want to take a look at them. That just limits the surface area exposed on the ends. So therefore they dry a bit faster or slower. But does anybody want to take a look at these? Or do you want to pass them around?
So as it stands, you would do one pad, either a double or a single, as long as you've got
Generally speaking, one at a time.
frames of bees or more in.
Yeah, if you got 2/3 of a box or more, you could put one. Generally, if your hive is quite small, the mite level is usually a bit lower. The big thing is test. Make sure you're testing regularly. This year we were late. Like, we start the Apivard in March, but it was very cold. Like, our last snowbanks melted on the 18th of May or 20th, something like that. So we didn't really start treating until the last week of May this year, and then we're continuing right now. We put it on in temperatures as low as 10, 12 during the day, but you'd like it to be, if you can hit 20 to 25 is perfect during the day. A little cooler, 18, 19 highs, you can put it on. Just don't go over 30. When you start getting a daytime highs at 32, 33, it's just too much heat and it vaporizes too fast, and it's harder, a lot harder in your queens. That's probably where a lot of the misconceptions of Formic came from. People throwing it on when it's 35 above out and killing brood and queens, and it's just too much, too fast for them.
When would be the last week that you applied it?
We have had some yards where they're bad and put some on right when we wrapped. Put one on, but we usually don't recommend it. It's, again, weather. Last year when we were wrapping in October, it was 24, 25 out. So with a couple yards, not all of them, most of them we were done, but there was a few that the mite levels, we were killing lots still, so we just gave them an extra shot. And we wrapped them up, and they wintered well. Pads were on top in the spring, dried right out, and looking like some of those ones that were handed around. Wasn't much left of them, but yeah, you usually start when we're stripping, and 4 to 5 rounds in the fall. It's kind of dependent on the mite load. You got to test, and if you're controlling them, maybe 4 should be enough, maybe even 3, but I'd recommend 4. Last summer, I worked for Hootmer Honey, which is the parent company of the MiteGone, but I have some of my own, and I found one hive in particular pulling honey that split the boxes, and on the drone you could see mites. It was bad, so I went home and brought some back, and it was a 5 high. I had 2 empties on top of a 3rd box that had a lot of brood. I put 3 on the very top of it, and it killed mites. I don't really like to do that, but they were so bad in that particular hive that it's kind of a flash emergency treatment.
Yeah. You're gonna die either way.
Yeah, at that point you got to try something, because if you let it go unchecked, they're not going to be there in the spring. So try to knock them down the best you can. And then I still did the regular treatments in the fall. But just try to do a flash treatment to.
Then you do oxalic vapor after?
We do a little bit of it, not too much. Like, we had a couple yards that were very bad with mites, and we did the Formic on like Monday, and we went back Wednesday, Thursday, and did oxalic, and then put one of these pink pads on like the following Monday. So it was every 3 days they got something fresh. Didn't seem to hurt the bees at all, and they actually wintered, worked well. And then this spring the mite levels are low in those yards, so, but we don't do that in every one, just again for us the time. And
So you're doing the oxalic while you still have the pad?
yeah, we leave it in there.
Okay.
But if your mite levels are controlled, that's not really necessary. Like, we just do that in the case of they're very high and we got to really take drastic measures. But there's literally like 2 or 3 yards out of 100, so very few. Key takeaways would be to make sure when you apply it on the top, your frames are clean, you got something to keep your lid from crushing it. No dripping. Wear your PPE. As anything, wear your PPE. Your eyes or skin is more important than the bees, so keep yourself safe. Which,
So you're doing you're doing a sticky board rather than additional mite wash.
yeah, we like the sticky boards are probably the gold standard because we've tested yards with mite washes and 2-3 mites and then treat them and put a sticky board under and end up with high numbers dropping that we didn't detect in a mite wash. Well, the natural drop would be mites that just naturally fall off the bees or die. And I believe it's 10, the threshold in a 24-hour period is getting up there. But as I said, the biggest, when you test it after putting one in, you will really know if there's a problem. Like we've had some, tested them, and it looked like somebody took a pepper shaker with mites and just lined it, and you can see the rows where the frames were where they were falling.
And that's for 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours of treatment.
Put it in and then you do your treatment
And
for
just
24 hours of kill.
Yeah, and you pull the sticky board out, leave your treatment in, and let it keep going. But that's like you'd essentially just on a regular floorboard or underneath the screen, leave it stick out a little bit so you can get it out easier. Well, a lot of the times the first like 3 you kind of see similar numbers because more bees hatch out in that week, and you get kind of a fresh wave of mites out. So it doesn't almost look like it's doing much, but then your 4th and 5th, then you see it drop. That's why you do it each week because the mites are in the brood, and if it's sealed, it doesn't kill them very well. But when they come out, you got a fresh pad, and they're out roaming the beehive, and then it gets them. Yeah, most treatments, even the Apivar, that's why it's so long. It's in there for a month, so you get all the hatches of brood, and the mites come out and get exposed to it.
So I just wanted to go over how many pads you would put in, like, let's say if so 2 brood boxes and 2 honey supers. How many pads would you put in?
I would put 2 on the very top.
So
2 at once, because you got such a volume of air there.
yeah, okay.
Like you'd 1 on just 2, but if you got 4 boxes, you got double their volume or more, because if they're not quite full, like
Okay.
we're putting 2 on that.
You are on that.
Yeah, right now we're putting 2. So it's nice to treat them before, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So.
Thanks so much, guys.